This is The Arm of the Starfish by Madeleine, Chapter 12. Adam stayed in the laboratory the rest of the afternoon. He worked with happy concentration on the tank and file. Here was work he knew. Here was safety. He was loath to leave when Denny's, changed into clean shorts and shirt, came to call him. After dinner, the two babies were put to bed. The rest gathered in the living room. Sandy, Dennis, and Peggy in their night things. Polly and Charles were staying up to see Joshua off. "May I sing until time for Josh to go?" Polly asked. "It's a must," Joshua said, his arm tightly about Polly's waist. "What first?" "The Tallis Cannon, of course, so father will know we're thinking of him. You start, Mother." Mrs. O'Keefe leading, they sang it in canon, one voice coming in after another. "All praise to thee, my God, this night, for all the blessings of the light. Keep me, oh keep me, King of kings, beneath thine own almighty wings." Polly's voice finished alone, light and clear and full of trust. Adam remembered, unwillingly, the empty washroom on the plane and thought of Polly drugged, gagged, dumped roughly onto a pile of luggage. He was grateful when Mrs. O'Keefe started the gay Arkansas Traveler. From this they went into a conglomeration of familiar hymns, madrigals, folk songs, even Bach chorales. Adam had played the guitar at school parties, and he knew the bass to much of the music. Joshua and Dr. O'Keefe were both tenors, so he was a welcome addition. "You're absolutely wonderful, Adam," Mrs. O'Keefe said. "I'm sick and tired of singing bass an octave high. If old Doc only had told us you could sing, it wouldn't have mattered whether you could work in the lab or not. How about 'Come unto these yellow sands'?" During the singing, Peggy, nightgown trailing, came and sat in Adam's lap. At first a little rigid, as though not quite certain of her welcome, then relaxing softly against him, her head on his chest, her breath coming more and more slowly until Adam realized she was sound asleep. He put his arm around the small, warm body, almost afraid to sing lest he disturb her, then relaxing and singing fully. Across the room, Joshua, sitting with Polly, smiled at him. Just as Adam began to feel that he must shift his position, and knew that he didn't want to move, despite his discomfort, for fear of waking Peggy, Mrs. O'Keefe rose and came over to him, saying, "Will you carry her to bed for me, please, Adam? Come on, boys. Time for bed." Adam stood up with the sleeping child. He realized that all evening he had been happy. He had forgotten about Callie. He had only felt only pleasure in the children and in the music. He did not want the peace of the evening to end. He did not want Joshua to fly back to Lisbon. But when the boy returned to the living room, Joshua said, "You're coming to see me off, aren't you, Adam?" "Well, sure." "I put some riding clothes in your room, same source as the bathing suits." Dr. O'Keefe laughed. "It's really not as bad as it sounds. We do make every effort to get the things back to their rightful owners. We'll be waiting for you outside." Mrs. O'Keefe stayed home with the younger children. Adam set off with the doctor and Joshua, who were both riding stocky golden brown horses, which Joshua told Adam were an island breed. Polly was on an elderly bay who seemed enormous for her, but was obviously gentle and reliable. Charles rode a shaggy pony, and Adam himself was given a large, white, matronly-looking beast, apparently first cousin in disposition to Polly's bay. The night was bright with a three-quarter moon, and the horses moved softly along the damp sand at the edge of the water, their hoofbeats almost silenced by the slow, steady sound of the sea. Against the dunes, fireflies glittered. Polly rode beside Adam. In the moonlight, the brilliance of her hair was turned to silver. She sat, tall and erect, her height making her seem more than her 12 years. Ahead of them rode the doctor and Joshua. Charles led the procession, a solitary, small figure. The two men were talking, and their voices, though not their words, were blown back on the wind. "Daddy wants to talk to Josh," Polly said, "and I can see he'd rather I didn't listen. And Charles is in one of his hermit moods. I want to talk to you anyhow. Josh and I went for a long walk this afternoon while you were in the lab working, and he didn't tell me one single thing. About what? About anything, Adam. I know children are not supposed to be curious, but life isn't as simple as that anymore, and I am 12 after all, and after all, I was kidnapped. Adam's sense of relaxation vanished. He felt himself stiffen in the saddle. Yes, Polly, you were. Well then, don't I have a right to ask a few questions? I don't think Joshua thought I did. Had the right, I mean. It was okay for me to ask him questions, even though he wouldn't answer any of them. But I got the idea that he didn't think it was all right for me to ask you questions. Why? Adam looked not at Polly, but at the moonlight dazzling the surface of the ocean. I'm not quite sure, he said at last. Then it is all right. Is it all right if I do ask you some questions? You can ask me anything you want to, Adam said, though I may be like Josh and not be very good at answering. But how about letting me start off by asking you a few things first? Of course. She was so willing. The face she had turned to him in the moonlight was so open that Adam winced. Polly, on the plane, when you went into the washroom, you were afraid, weren't you? Yes. Why? Father Tom told me it wasn't safe for him to keep me with him. Why? Because of She stopped herself. Because they'd know I was Daddy's daughter. And I know about what Daddy's doing. About starfish regenerating their arms? Yes. But that's not a secret, Polly. Your father said himself that he was sure other scientists were doing the same experiments. Polly leaned over her horse with a caressing gesture, putting her head down on its neck. After a moment, she sat up straight in the saddle again. But it's more than that. What is it, then? Didn't Daddy tell you? He doesn't trust me, Adam said starkly. But Adam... Adam's voice was savage. He has every right not to trust me. I trust you, Polly said. It was all Adam could do not to kick the heels of his horse's ribs, to gallop away. He growled, You're much too trusting for your own good. Oh, I don't go around trusting everybody the way Peggy does. I'm not that much of a child. I know there are people in the world that you can trust and people you can't. How do you decide which is which? You know with people, or you don't. I don't trust Callie. I wish you weren't going out to dinner with her. So do I. Do you have to? Yes, I think I do. Back in the brush, an owl screeched, a shrill, terrifying cry. Polly shuddered. I didn't trust the steward on that plane. He was weaselly. When you went into the bathroom, were you afraid of being kidnapped? Not exactly. I didn't know what I was afraid of. After all, I'd never been kidnapped before. But I guess it was really sort of in the back of my mind. You're sure it was the steward who put you in the canvas bag? Adam, if you're kidnapped, you don't forget the person who kidnaps you. But did you really see him? Yes, I was washing my hands, and I heard the knob of the door turn, but I'd locked it, so I didn't expect it to open. But when it did, I saw him in the mirror. He put his hand over my mouth before I could scream. He was so much stronger than I am, in spite of being Weasley, that I couldn't even make a noise fighting. And then he put that stuff over my nose and got the gag on me and got me in the sack. She began to tremble. I'm sorry, Adam said. I'm truly sorry to have to remind you of it. Will you let me ask you just a couple more questions? If you need to. I do need to. I wouldn't do it to you otherwise, I promise. Polly gave an oddly grown-up laugh. Don't sound so agonized, Adam. It's all right. Well, what about the steward? Adam asked, almost savagely. Is he just floating around loose? I mean, he might try to come here or something? Really, Adam, Polly sounded impatient. You must think Daddy's very careless or something. Interpol went right after him. Have they got him? Yes, last night. Father Tom called from Madrid. But I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. It's all over. Tension tightened her voice again. Adam sighed. I'm sorry. Just one more thing. When you got to the house, they took you right out of the sack? Yes. Who took you out? I don't know, Adam. Don't think Josh and Daddy haven't asked me this one over and over again, too. I was still groggy, and it was so dark in the room, and all I could tell was that it was a man, and I couldn't really tell about him, because at first I thought he was terribly fat, And then I felt one of his arms, and it was skinny. It was Adam's turn to shiver. The moon rode placidly in the cloudless sky, the stars dimmed by the brightness. The sea, too, was calm, and the waves rolling in gently, rhythmically. Up on the dunes, the grasses and the great wings of the palms were almost still, though the fronds made their incessant, scratchy whispering. The air was warm, and they rode without sweaters or jackets. But Adam shivered. Polly looked over at him. He gave me something to drink. I told you that. And it put me to sleep. And then, later on, whatever it was, when I was awake and it was all dark and horrible and I was frightened and the door was locked and I started to cry, that man came in. Which man? You know, Adam. I told you at the Ritz. The man who drove us. That beast. And then he blindfolded and gagged me and put me in the car, and I knew he'd hurt me if I tried to cry or do anything. And then I was there in front of the Ritz, and you were there too, and you held me, and I knew it was going to be all right. In front of them, Adam could see Dr. O'Keefe and Joshua talking quietly, their horses close. Charles was still in the lead, sitting up very straight, a stocky shadow on his little pony. A firefly flew across the beach from the dunes, lit for a moment on Charles's shoulder, and then disappeared into the moonlight. Adam, Polly said, why haven't Daddy or Josh told me anything about you? I don't know. How did you happen to be there on the sidewalk? Were you in the car too? Yes. Were you kidnapped too? Suddenly, almost without his volition, Adam's heels kicked and his horse broke into a trot. He kicked again. The horse started to canter. As he came up beside Joshua, he called out, half choking, It was Carolyn Cutter I opened the door to. He pulled the horse up. Joshua dropped behind, and then came up on Adam's other side, so that the boy was riding between the two men. Dr. O'Keefe, at the water's edge, was looking straight ahead, not at Adam, not even at the small figure of Charles placidly riding along a few yards in front. Adam turned toward Joshua, who smiled at him brilliantly, but did not speak. Behind them there was a thudding, and Polly's bay came ambling alongside with what was obviously all the speed it considered suitable. Hey, Polly called. I'm sorry, Adam said. I have to talk to your father. Polly, Dr. O'Keefe said, go ride with Charles, please. But Charles wants to... You don't need to talk to him. Just go right beside him. In the moonlight, Adam could see Polly glower. But she responded obediently. Yes, Daddy, and trotted the large, disapproving bay so close to the water's edge that an incoming wave rippled against the protesting hooves. Charles turned to her and spoke, at which Polly flung up her arms in the air in an abused fashion and trotted the bay around the pony so that the little boy could be next to the water. All right, Adam, Dr. O'Keefe said quietly. And then she took you to her father? You know? Yes, but you had to tell us yourself. Joshua turned to Adam. Had you ever seen Carolyn Cutter before you met her in the airport in New York? No. How did you happen to speak to her there? I suppose, Adam said slowly, you might say she picked me up. But it all seemed perfectly natural. What with the fog and everything, and the planes being canceled and the flights deferred, all kinds of people were talking, who wouldn't have if everything had been perfectly ordinary. Dr. O'Keefe asked, Was it just casual chit-chat between you? No. She warned me about Canon Tallis. About you, sir. Warned you about what? Well, not anything in particular. Just a warning in a vacuum. I don't think I really took it very seriously at first. It was all just seemed kind of exciting and an adventure. And you thought she was attractive? Yes, sir. Joshua reached over and patted the neck of Adam's horse, as though in this way he could communicate comfort directly to Adam. And so she is. So, when she knocked on the door, she told me she'd help me find Polly. You believed her? Well, Josh, I did find Polly. She was there at the Cutter's house. The older men exchanged glances, and Dr. O'Keefe said, Yes, Polly's description of the man in the dark room could hardly have been anyone but Typhon Cutter. But we had to be sure. Now, Adam, will you go back to the moment you opened the door and tell us in as much detail as you can everything that happened until you and Polly were put out of the car in front of the Ritz? Yes, sir, I'll try, but I was terribly tired, so I may not get it exactly right. I'll do my best. He looked out over the ocean. The moon was made a The moon made a wide, shining path from the water's edge to the horizon. Carefully, he tried to tell the two men the events of that night, that seemed far more than 3 nights behind him. In spite of the fatigue that had kept him from thinking clearly or acting reasonably, his accurate memory again helped him, bringing the events and words of that night up from his subconscious. He looked at the bright swath of moonlight on the water and recalled small details he hadn't known he remembered, or that, up to this moment, he hadn't remembered. He saw again with his mind's eye the black and white room, saw the obesity of Typhon Cutter's body in such repellent contrast to the thinness of arms and legs. He saw again the extraordinary beauty of the young man in the portrait, the young man who had grown into a middle-aged spider. If you didn't know it was the same person, how could anyone change so completely? The odd distribution of weight is glandular, Dr. O'Keefe said. But I don't think it's as simple as that. He reflects all the choices he has made his whole life long. Why? Adam asked with an abruptness with which he had asked it of Typhon Cutter. Why did Canon Tallis lose his eyebrows? For a moment, the strained look tightened on Dr. O'Keefe's face again. He was in Korea. He not only withstood torture himself, but he helped the men with him to stand up against it. This has left the greatest mark on him. Not his own suffering, but the pain of others. Adam, Joshua said, when we didn't know where Polly was, and then we didn't know where you were, if he'd had any hair left, it would have turned white. Stop, Joshua, the doctor said quietly. Don't make this any harder for Adam than it is already. Go on, boy. Yes, sir. He sighed deeply, unconsciously, talking in a voice so low that several times he was asked to repeat himself. Finally, he said, I think that's about it. I'm glad I've told you. But I think I have to tell you that I'm still confused. I'm still not certain or secure about anything. Again, Joshua patted Adam's horse, saying softly, That's all right, Adam. Who is? So of course I won't have dinner with Callie tomorrow night. I don't ever want to see her again. Dr. O'Keefe spoke quietly but firmly. But I'm afraid you'll have to. When you opened that door to her, you started a chain of events for yourself that you can't end quite this easily. Ahead of them, Polly called out, There's the plane! Charles's clear voice came, Race you! And his little pony tore across the sand. Polly's bay broke into a resigned trot. The plane lay on the beach ahead of them like a strange prehistoric bird in the shadows. Again, Adam felt the sense of irrational panic at the idea that Joshua was going to leave. Charles reached the plane, the pony's length ahead of Polly. They dismounted and walked their horses over to the softer sand where there was an old barnacled pile that could be used as a hitching post. Dr. O'Keefe turned to the children, leaving Joshua and Adam side by side. Adam. Yes, Josh? Feel better? I don't really know. You will. Okay, if you say so. Not if I say so, but you will, even though it's not going to be easy. Adam set his jaw stubbornly. I will not have dinner with Callie tomorrow night. I will not have anything more to do with the Cutters. Joshua spoke tranquilly. Oh, yes, you will. I will not. Listen, Joshua said. I'll bet you anything you like that. I'll bet you anything that you like that you will. I wouldn't put money on it if I were you. I'd put more than that on it. When I whistled the Tallis Cannon, you said you'd sung it in choir, till my voice changed. I was going to say something, but I'm not. Instead, did you ever hear Tom Tallis use any kind of password phrase? Yes, in Madrid, twice. Recognize it? No, it was poetry, that's all I could tell. Yes, Robert Frost. 2 Tramps in Mud Time. A simple sort of little poem that starts out to be, with the poet out chopping wood and 2 tramps coming along and resenting it because he's doing it for fun, what they figure they ought to be paid for. Then comes the last stanza. Whammo, a lower cut right to the solar plexus. But yield who will to their separation, my object in living is to unite. My avocation and my vocation is as my 2 eyes make one in sight. Only where love and need are one, and the work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done for heaven and future's sakes. I'm not sure about heaven, but I do feel I have to do my best for the future. And if you're any kind of scientist, you will too. And if it means going out with Callie tomorrow, you'll do it. Adam still sounded stubborn. As far as I'm concerned, Carolyn Cutter is in the past. Listen, you told us tonight because of Polly, didn't you? Adam sighed again. I don't really know why I told you. I don't know why anything anymore. It was Polly, Joshua said with certainty. At least it would have been for me, and I'm willing to bet it was for you. Adam, I don't know about you, but I can't do anything except because I care about people, because I love people. I don't do it for love of God, like Tom Tallis, or for heaven's sake, as Mr. Frost said. But because I love people, I have to act according to it, to the fact that I love them. Maybe this doesn't make any sense, but that's the way I am, and you'll just have to accept it. Adam said softly, the way you accepted me? I failed on you that first morning, didn't I? I wanted to push you too far, too fast. Don't push me now, then, Adam said. Touché. But I have the feeling there isn't much time, that I don't have the time to give you time. Okay, kid, come on. It's time I shoved off.